It all began on a calm Tuesday morning when I decided to take a short trip to the post office to pick up a few packages for our neighborhood's community center project. I'd been a resident of Maplewood Estates for 5 years now, long enough to know every neighbor, every dog, and unfortunately, every HOA board member, especially Karen. Everyone in our neighborhood knew her. She had a way of making the simplest tasks feel like a declaration of war. She considered herself the guardian of the community's image, someone who thought every blade of grass, every mailbox, and every parking space existed under her divine supervision. And lately, her obsession had reached a new level. For weeks, she'd been muttering about how the HOA's mail was being tampered with. No one believed her, of course. The board's mail was perfectly fine. But Karen had convinced herself that someone, probably me, since I'd once dared to disagree with her during a meeting, was somehow intercepting official HOA correspondence. That morning, as I pulled into the post office parking lot, I had no idea Karen was already inside, brewing her latest storm. The moment I stepped through the glass doors, I heard her voice echoing across the small lobby. "I'm telling you," she snapped at the clerk behind the counter, "I'm the president of the Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association, and I have the right to pick up all the HOA's mail. Hand it over now." The poor postal clerk, a young woman who couldn't have been older than 20, looked like she wanted to crawl under the counter. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "we can only release mail to the person listed on the box rental. Do you have identification for that name?" Karen slapped her HOA badge on the counter like it was a government credential. "This is all the identification you need," she huffed. "I represent every homeowner in that neighborhood. That means the mail is mine by extension." The clerk gave a polite but exhausted smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's not how it works. Mail delivery and pickup are protected under federal." "I know it's protected," Karen interrupted. "You think I don't know the law? I deal with rules every single day. HOA regulations are federal-level authority." I had to bite back a laugh. HOA rules were not even close to federal law. But that was Karen for you. Her ego was big enough to fill the post office lobby. I decided to stay quiet and watch how this unfolded. The clerk, visibly uncomfortable, called for the postmaster. A minute later, out came Mr. Jensen, the postmaster himself, a tall, graying man with decades of experience and the kind of patience that only someone who's dealt with every form of human nonsense could possess. "Good morning, ma'am," he greeted. "I'm Postmaster Jensen. I understand there's a concern." Karen straightened, clutching her purse like she was about to testify before Congress. "Yes," she said sternly. "I'm the president of the Maplewood Estates HOA, and I demand to collect all official HOA mail today. The mail is being mishandled, and as an officer, I'm taking control of it." Mr. Jensen nodded slowly. "Do you have any documentation showing you're authorized to receive it?" Karen frowned. "I am the documentation. My authority is the authorization. You think I carry a permission slip for myself?" The postmaster's patience began to thin, though his tone remained calm. "Ma'am, unless your name is listed as an authorized recipient on the HOA's postal box, I can't legally give you that mail. That's a federal rule. Mail tampering or unauthorized access can lead to serious consequences." For a moment, the air went silent. Then Karen exploded. "So now you're accusing me of being a criminal?" she barked. "Do you know who I am? I could have your job by the end of the day. I run one of the most respected communities in this county, and you're telling me I can't access my own mail?" Mr. Jensen folded his arms. "Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what I'm saying." Her face flushed bright red. She spun toward the small crowd that had gathered, me included, and started ranting. This is harassment. Discrimination. This is what happens when small-town people think they can disrespect authority. At that point, I couldn't hold back anymore. I took a few steps closer and said, "Karen, you don't have any authority here. It's federal property. The post office doesn't answer to the HOA." Her head whipped around so fast I thought she'd strain her neck. "Oh, you," she hissed. "Of course you're here. Probably snooping to see if I finally caught you stealing our documents." I blinked. "Stealing your documents? Karen, the only thing I've ever taken from the HOA is peace of mind when I stop listening to your nonsense." The crowd chuckled. Even the clerk tried to hide a smile. But Karen didn't find it funny. She slammed her hand on the counter and shouted, "That's it. I want the police here now. This man's harassing me, and this postmaster is refusing to release community property. Mr. Jensen's expression darkened. Ma'am, please step back. You're disrupting postal operations. If you continue, I'll be the one calling the authorities. You wouldn't dare, she barked. He calmly reached for the phone on his desk. Actually, I would. The room fell quiet. Karen froze, realizing she'd just pushed the wrong person. Mr. Jensen wasn't some HOA homeowner she could intimidate. He represented the federal government. Still, she tried one last time. You're making a huge mistake, she said, her voice trembling with anger. I have connections, and when they hear about this, you'll regret. He hung up the phone after dialing. I've already contacted the local sheriff's department, he said simply. You can explain everything to them when they arrive. Karen's jaw dropped. You called the sheriff? He nodded. You made a demand for mail that's not addressed to you. That's a federal issue. I'm required to report it. By now, everyone in the post office was silent. I almost felt bad for her, almost. But then she pointed at me and said, he's part of this. He's sabotaging me. He's been trying to undermine the HOA for months. Mr. Jensen turned to me. Do you have any connection to this situation, sir? Only that I live in the same neighborhood, I replied. And that I've been accused by her of everything short of international espionage. That got a laugh from the clerk. The postmaster nodded. You're free to go, sir. Thank you for your patience. But I didn't leave. I wanted to see this through. Karen's voice began to shake. You can't call the authorities. This is a misunderstanding. I was only doing my duty. Mr. Jensen replied, Ma'am, duty doesn't involve taking mail that isn't yours. Please wait here. Outside, the wail of approaching sirens could already be heard. The sound of the sirens grew louder, echoing against the brick walls of the post office. The murmurs from the small crowd of onlookers faded into a tense silence. Karen's defiance began to crack. Her hands trembled slightly, and her confident stance wavered as reality started sinking in. Mr. Jensen, calm as ever, stood behind the counter with his arms folded, watching her like a teacher waiting for a student to admit they'd been caught cheating. You might want to take a seat, ma'am, he said evenly. Karen shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. I don't need to sit. I'm not under arrest. I've done nothing wrong. But even as she said it, her voice quivered. The doors swung open, and two uniformed sheriff's deputies walked in. Their badges gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and one of them, a broad-shouldered man with a clean-shaven face, stepped forward. Morning, he said, his tone professional. We got a call about a disturbance involving postal interference? Mr. Jensen gestured toward Karen. Yes, deputy. This woman demanded access to mail that doesn't belong to her. When informed of the federal restrictions, she refused to comply and began shouting at employees and customers. Karen quickly jumped in. That's a complete exaggeration. I am the elected president of the Maplewood Estates HOA, and the mail in question pertains to community matters. As the HOA representative, I have every right to collect it. The deputies exchanged a look. The younger one took out a small notepad. Ma'am, do you have any documentation showing you're authorized to retrieve that mail? I don't need documentation, she snapped. I am the HOA. The deputy raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, the post office can only release mail to the person or organization listed on the rental agreement. That's federal law. Without proof of authorization, you can't take it. Karen huffed, folding her arms. This is ridiculous. I've been managing that neighborhood for 7 years. You think a few envelopes make me some kind of criminal? The older deputy stepped closer, his tone firm but polite. Nobody said that. But refusing to comply after being told the rules is where this becomes a problem. The postmaster has the right to report any suspected mail interference. Her face went pale for a moment before she quickly covered it up with more indignation. This is harassment. Everyone in this town is out to make me look bad because I enforce order. I'm surrounded by rule breakers. I couldn't help but sigh. Karen, no one's out to get you. You just can't walk into a federal building and demand someone else's mail. She turned toward me, eyes blazing. Stay out of this. You're the one who probably complained about me to the board. You want to ruin my reputation because you don't like authority. I shrugged. Karen, your reputation ruins itself. The younger deputy stifled a laugh, quickly clearing his throat. Ma'am, please calm down. No one's being arrested right now, but if you keep raising your voice and disrupting business, we'll have to escort you out. Karen gasped. Escort me out? I'm the victim here. Mr. Jensen finally spoke up, his patience wearing thin. Ma'am, this is the last warning. Either you leave voluntarily, or I'll have to file a formal report with the postal inspectors for attempted mail interference. You don't want that on your record. At the mention of postal inspectors, Karen froze. Even she knew that wasn't something to take lightly. Those were the people who handled federal crimes. Her voice softened slightly. Maybe there's just been a misunderstanding, she said. Perhaps the HOA box wasn't updated properly. Mr. Jensen replied evenly, that may be true, but it's not something we can fix through yelling and demands. You'll need to come back with the authorized person listed on the account, whoever's actually registered as the recipient. Karen hesitated, then said, that would be our treasurer, Mark. But he's out of town. Then you'll have to wait until he returns, Mr. Jensen said. The crowd began to disperse, realizing the drama was winding down. But Karen wasn't done yet. She turned back to the deputies, desperate to salvage some sense of power. I want to file a complaint against him, she shouted, pointing at me. He's been interfering with HOA operations for months. He probably hacked into our emails too. The older deputy sighed. Ma'am, we're not here for neighborhood disputes. If you have evidence of a separate issue, you can file a civil complaint through the proper channels. Right now, this is about your behavior at the post office. Karen's lip quivered. For the first time, she looked genuinely unsure of herself. You people have no idea what it's like to deal with ungrateful residents every day, she muttered. I'm the only one trying to keep things together, and this is how I'm treated? The younger deputy gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Ma'am, why don't we step outside and talk? It'll be easier to sort this out away from the counter. She allowed herself to be guided outside, muttering under her breath the whole way. I followed at a distance, curious to see how it would end. Outside, the autumn air felt crisp against my face. A few people lingered near the parking lot, watching from a respectful distance. Karen stood beside her silver SUV, arms crossed, still fuming but noticeably calmer now that she was out of the spotlight. The older deputy took notes. Ma'am, just to be clear, you understand now that you can't pick up HOA mail without being listed on the rental authorization? Karen sighed dramatically. Yes, fine, I understand. But I'm still filing a complaint about the disrespect I received inside. That postmaster was completely out of line. The deputy nodded patiently. You're free to file a complaint if you wish. But from our perspective, this situation's resolved. Just don't come back here demanding mail that isn't yours, all right? She didn't answer, only turned to glare at me as if I'd somehow orchestrated her public humiliation. The younger deputy approached me and asked quietly, You live in the same neighborhood as her? Unfortunately, yes, I replied. She's been running the HOA like it's her personal kingdom. He smirked slightly. Sounds like she just met her match today. Karen overheard and snapped, I heard that. He gave a polite nod. Then maybe take it as friendly advice. The deputies got back into their cruiser, but before leaving, the older one turned to Mr. Jensen, who had come outside as well. If she shows up again or continues causing trouble, call us right away. We'll document it officially. Mr. Jensen nodded. Will do. Thank you, officers. As the patrol car pulled away, Karen stood there silently for a moment, clutching her purse and glaring at everyone in sight. Then, without another word, she got into her SUV, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot so fast that gravel sprayed across the sidewalk. The moment she left, the tension dissolved. The clerk inside finally laughed in relief, and the postmaster shook his head. I've seen a lot in my years, he said, but that woman might take the cake. I chuckled. Welcome to Maplewood Estates. He smiled. Remind me never to move there. As I left the post office with my own mail, legally collected, of course, I couldn't help thinking that maybe, just maybe, Karen's reign of control was finally starting to crumble. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. People like her didn't back down quietly. They regrouped, plotted, and came back louder. And judging by the way she sped off, I had a feeling this wasn't the last time Karen and I would be crossing paths. The next morning, Maplewood Estates' private Facebook group was on fire. Every time something dramatic happened in our community, word spread faster than a rumor in a high school hallway. Someone had been inside the post office that day and caught a short video clip of Karen arguing with the postmaster. By sunrise, that clip had already been shared dozens of times under the caption, "HOA president tries to take federal mail, gets schooled by the postmaster." I didn't post it, but I couldn't pretend I wasn't amused. Watching Karen's reputation unravel in real time was like watching a slow-motion car crash. You didn't want to look, but you couldn't look away either. By noon, the HOA's group chat was buzzing. Half the neighborhood was furious at her behavior. The other half was pretending not to notice, hoping she wouldn't start another round of inspections for violations. That afternoon, I took a walk down to the community clubhouse. The board was having a meeting, and I wanted to see if Karen would even show up after what happened. To my surprise, her silver SUV was already parked outside, engine still running like she'd arrived in a hurry. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The HOA board, 5 members seated at a folding table, looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Karen sat at the head of the table, her lips pressed into a tight line. "Let's begin," she announced sharply, as if nothing had happened. "We have a very serious issue to discuss, the ongoing mishandling of HOA correspondence by the post office." The treasurer, Mark, the same man who was actually authorized to collect the HOA's mail, cleared his throat. "Karen, I saw the video. The post office didn't mishandle anything. You went there without permission and tried to take mail that wasn't in your name." Karen's nostrils flared. "That video was taken out of context. I was simply trying to prevent a possible security breach. We can't just let anyone handle our mail. Sensitive documents are at risk." Another board member, Denise, spoke up. "Karen, the only person who's ever had an issue with the mail is you. Mark's been collecting it for 3 years without a problem." Karen's eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally. "So you're all just going to side against me," she snapped. "After everything I've done for this community?" "Karen," Denise said carefully, "you called the police on the postmaster. That's not leadership. That's chaos." Karen slammed her notebook shut. "You all have no idea what kind of responsibility it takes to keep a neighborhood like this in shape. I'm the only one enforcing the rules. Without me, this place would fall apart." I leaned against the back wall, watching quietly as the board exchanged uncomfortable glances. They were used to Karen's outbursts, but this one felt different, more desperate. Mark sighed. "We're not questioning your dedication, but you crossed a line. You can't just claim authority over federal property." Karen pointed her pen like a weapon. "And you can't keep undermining me in front of the residents. That's why they don't respect us anymore. Because you all let people like him," she gestured toward me, "spread lies." The room went silent. I raised my hands defensively. "Karen, I didn't post the video. And even if I did, maybe people just want transparency." "Transparency?" she repeated mockingly. "You mean gossip. You've been trying to discredit me since the day you moved in." "That's not true," I replied. "You discredit yourself every time you overstep." Denise leaned forward. "Karen, enough. We're not here to fight residents. We're here to keep things running smoothly." Karen exhaled sharply and sat back, her expression hardening. "Fine. If that's how everyone feels, maybe I'll just resign. Then you'll all see how much you need me." But no one rushed to stop her. For a moment, she looked around, expecting someone to beg her to stay. When no one did, her expression faltered. "Well," she demanded, "aren't you going to say anything?" Mark flipped through his folder. "If you're serious about resigning, we'll need it in writing. We can hold a vote to appoint an interim president next week." Karen blinked. "You can't just replace me. I'm the backbone of this HOA." "Karen," Denise said softly, "maybe take some time off. You've been under a lot of stress lately." Karen's chair scraped loudly as she stood. "You're all making a mistake," she said through clenched teeth. "You'll regret this when the neighborhood falls apart." She stormed out, heels clicking against the tile, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. Mark looked at me and sighed. "Well, that could have gone worse." I chuckled. "I don't know. She might be drafting a manifesto right now." Everyone laughed weakly, though we all knew it wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to step down gracefully. 2 days later, a new drama began. Early in the morning, several residents found printed flyers taped to their doors. The papers were covered in bold red ink and official-looking language. Urgent HOA notice. Due to recent administrative failures, the HOA board is temporarily suspended pending investigation. All neighborhood matters are to be directed to interim chairwoman Karen W. until further notice. Failure to comply may result in fines or disciplinary action. I almost spat out my coffee when I read it. Karen had actually created fake HOA notices, complete with a forged signature from Mark and an official HOA seal she must have printed from her home computer. Within an hour, the group chat exploded again. Dozens of residents were confused. Some even worried they'd lose their voting privileges or be fined. That afternoon, the Rail HOA board held an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. Karen wasn't invited, but she showed up anyway, clutching a thick binder and a smug smile. "This is an official board proceeding," Mark said as she entered. "You're not supposed to be here." Karen ignored him. "I'm here to restore order. Since you all abandoned your duties, I took it upon myself to re-establish proper HOA authority. You should be thanking me." Denise frowned. "You forged our signatures, Karen." "That's fraud." Karen scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. It was a temporary fix. The residents needed leadership." "Leadership?" I said. "You mean dictatorship?" Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny? You're just jealous that people listen to me." Mark stood up. "Karen, this is serious. The sheriff's office is already aware of your behavior at the post office. If you keep impersonating board officials, you could face real charges." For a moment, fear flickered in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with indignation. "You're all ganging up on me. I've done nothing but serve this community. And this is my thanks." Denise shook her head. "You don't serve the community, Karen. You control it." Karen's voice cracked slightly. "Someone has to. Without me, this place will fall into chaos." "No," I said quietly. "Without you, it might finally have peace." Her expression hardened again. She gathered her binder and turned for the door. "You'll regret this," she said coldly. "All of you." And with that, she was gone once more, leaving behind a silence filled with both relief and unease. None of us knew it yet, but the situation was about to spiral further than anyone expected. Karen wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. ChatGPT said. Later that week, things in Maplewood Estates went from mildly chaotic to downright unbelievable. Word about Karen's fake flyers reached not just the residents, but the county authorities. Apparently, one of the homeowners, a retired postal worker, had recognized the copied HOA seal and the forged signatures and reported the documents as possible fraud. That was all it took for the situation to explode. By Friday morning, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, I found Deputy Miller, the same officer who had responded to the post office incident, standing on my porch. "Morning," he said. "Sorry to bother you again, but we're following up on a report involving your HOA president, or, well, former president." I nodded. "Let me guess. The flyers." He chuckled dryly. "You guessed it. The postmaster from last week filed a statement, too. Seems your HOA friend's making a name for herself." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What's happening?" He flipped open a small notepad. "Well, she's being looked into for impersonating officials and possibly forging documents. The postmaster submitted security footage, and we've received about 30 statements from residents. Some of them thought those flyers were legitimate and actually stopped paying dues because of them." I couldn't help but smirk. Sounds like she finally outsmarted herself. "Yeah," he said, sighing. "But people like that rarely think they're in the wrong. We just need statements confirming what happened." After a short conversation, I gave my statement, describing her behavior at the post office and the HOA meeting. When the deputy left, I had the uneasy feeling this was about to turn into a full-blown scandal. And I was right. That evening, a special HOA assembly was held. Nearly the entire neighborhood showed up, something that never happened unless there was free pizza involved. The clubhouse was packed. The air buzzed with tension and gossip. Karen sat near the front, arms crossed, defiant as ever, as if nothing could touch her. Mark stood up at the podium. Thank you all for coming. I wish this meeting were under better circumstances, but as most of you know, there have been some serious issues involving the HOA's leadership. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Karen rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath. Mark continued. Earlier this week, unauthorized flyers were distributed to residents, claiming the HOA board was suspended. Those documents were not legitimate. They were created without approval and included forged signatures. A loud gasp spread through the room. Someone in the back shouted, "We all got those flyers." Mark nodded. Yes, and we've already contacted the county to address the situation. We want everyone to know that any correspondence from the HOA will come through official channels only, from verified emails or letters signed by multiple board members. Karen suddenly stood up. This is ridiculous. I sent those notices because the HOA was collapsing. Someone had to take action while everyone else was sitting around doing nothing. Denise stood next to Mark. Karen, you didn't take action. You committed fraud. You pretended to be the board. Karen's face flushed red. Fraud? That's a big word for people who don't appreciate leadership. I was protecting this community. Mark held up a manila folder. The sheriff's department disagrees. They've already reviewed evidence from the post office and our security footage here. You overstepped, Karen. This isn't about leadership. It's about accountability. The room erupted in murmurs. Karen's expression faltered for just a second, then hardened again. You're all turning on me because I actually did my job. You should be thanking me. I couldn't help but speak up. Karen, doing your job doesn't mean breaking the law. You demanded federal mail, forged signatures, and tried to control the neighborhood through fear. That's not leadership. It's ego. The crowd went silent. Her eyes met mine, filled with fury. You always have something to say, don't you? You've been undermining me since day one. No, I said calmly. You've been undermining yourself. At that moment, the doors opened, and Deputy Miller stepped in with another officer. The chatter died instantly. Karen's face drained of color. The deputy walked toward the podium and spoke clearly, "Good evening. We're here to deliver a notice regarding an active investigation into unauthorized document creation and false representation of an HOA board. Ms. Karen W., you are not under arrest at this time, but you are required to appear for questioning at the sheriff's office tomorrow morning." The room buzzed with disbelief. Karen's voice trembled. You can't be serious. I was helping my neighborhood. Miller nodded. You can explain that during questioning, ma'am. But right now, we need you to acknowledge receipt of this notice. He handed her a folded paper. Karen took it with shaking hands, glaring at everyone around her like we were traitors. You're all ungrateful, she muttered. Everything I did was for you. Mark replied quietly, No, Karen. Everything you did was for control. She didn't answer. Instead, she stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the window panes rattled. After she left, the room erupted with whispers and relieved laughter. The tension that had hung over Maplewood Estates for years finally began to lift. Denise leaned over to Mark and said softly, Do you think she'll actually show up for questioning? Mark sighed. If she doesn't, they'll find her. Either way, this neighborhood might finally get a break. When the meeting ended, I walked home under the dim glow of the streetlights. The air felt lighter, quieter. For the first time in a long while, Maplewood Estates wasn't under Karen's watchful eye. The next morning, I passed by the post office again. Mr. Jensen, the postmaster, was sorting mail near the front desk. He looked up when he saw me and grinned. Morning, he said. Heard about your HOA president. I laughed. Yeah, you were the one who started the domino effect. He shrugged modestly. Just doing my job. People forget that roles apply to everyone, even the self-appointed ones. That's Karen's biggest flaw, I said. She thought she was above them. He chuckled. Well, maybe she'll learn something from this. Maybe, I replied. But if I know Karen, she'll probably tell everyone she's the victim of a conspiracy. We both laughed. By the end of the week, the sheriff's department released a brief statement confirming that Karen had been questioned for misrepresentation and unauthorized use of official documents. While no arrest was made, She was removed from all HOA responsibilities indefinitely and barred from contacting residents on behalf of the board. For Maplewood Estates, it was the start of a new chapter, one without HOA power struggles, phony violations, or Karen's constant surveillance. A month later, the neighborhood felt normal again. Kids played outside without her threatening fines for noise violations. People painted their mailboxes without fear of receiving angry letters about color uniformity. Life was peaceful. Every now and then, I'd still see Karen's SUV parked at her house, the blinds drawn tight. She mostly kept to herself after that. No meetings, no flyers, no public appearances. Sometimes I wondered if she'd finally learned humility. Other times, I figured she was just waiting for the right moment to reassert control. But as far as I was concerned, the postmaster had been right all along. Rules applied to everyone, even Karen. And for once, it felt like justice, quiet, simple, and long overdue, had finally been delivered, stamped, and signed for.